Have you ever noticed that just as you can be in different physical locations in the external world, you can also be in different places in the internal world as well? For example, different moods, different states of mind, different kinds of thoughts, feelings, and impulses. In the outer geophysical world, there are beautiful mountains and valleys, oceans and deserts. The internal world also features a variety of different landscapes, some very dangerous and unpleasant, and some beautiful beyond words. Have you ever tried to consistently take note of this internal landscape? How well do you know the topography of your own internal world? The purpose of this movie is to tell you about a certain state of consciousness which has always been available to you, familiar to some mystics and martial artists, but which is seldom experienced with any consistency by most people, although flashes of it do occur every now and then. It should really be our normal state of consciousness, but most people have not even heard of it before. Spending more time in the state of consciousness would enormously improve the quality of our lives. It would help us to avoid thinking, feeling, and acting in inappropriate ways, and to save a certain kind of mysterious energy that can have a transformative effect when not dissipated by our ordinary state of consciousness. Our parents should have taught us about this state of consciousness, and their parents should have taught them. But they and their ancestors forgot about it a long time ago. We'll call the state of consciousness non-identification, a term coined by the mystic Gurdjieff in the early 1900s. This term can best be understood by referring to its opposite, identification, which is more or less our normal waking stream of consciousness. Identification is very similar to dreaming. When we dream, we take the dream content for granted, no matter how extreme or absurd. It never occurs to us that the content may be suspect. It does not occur to us that we are dreaming. We take the dream as reality. We do not question the basic premises of the dream. We go with the flow, even if we are flying or running from dinosaurs. We don't say, "Wait a moment, this can't be right." It does not occur to us to interrupt the flow of interpretation of the dream by questioning its validity and reality. In the same way, when we are awake, our consciousness is like an empty stage that can be possessed by all sorts of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Our situation is not unlike the old movie, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, in which Dr. Jekyll is possessed by the demonic spirit of Mr. Hyde and made to do, feel, and say all sorts of despicable and destructive things. Another analogy is that our consciousness is like a radio receiver that can tune to all sorts of different stations, and then it thinks it is generating the music itself on the fly. It doesn't realize that it is being played and is but a passive receiver, and isn't even controlling which station gets tuned on the dial, although it could if it knew how. We are possessed by whatever gets played because the thoughts and feelings and impulses are automatically occurring in us. We take them for granted as valid, and we go along, join with and identify with them, It doesn't occur to us at the moment we are experiencing them that they might be wrong, inappropriate, or invalid, or more accurately, are being mechanically selected as just one out of 1,000 possible ways of thinking, feeling, and reacting to a situation. Just as when we are dreaming, we don't know we are dreaming and can't wake up from the dream and are incapable of questioning that reality, so too, in our so-called waking state, it does not occur to us to question the wisdom and validity of our experience. That is, of our thoughts, our feelings, views, attitudes, impulses, and reactions to any given situation at a given moment. That tendency to take the validity of our immediate experience for granted, in combination with the lack of awareness that there are many alternative views, is the essence of identification. Identification is very much like dreaming. It is a kind of waking dream. It is also like being possessed by a spirit who wears glasses that distort the perception of reality in a specific way and who has access to very limited information. To compound the felony, this spirit believes that he is the source and power behind all he says and does, and that he believes he himself is an absolute genius. He is not at all humble about his opinions. Quite the reverse. He is righteous and arrogant and takes offense if called into question. Non-identification, on the other hand, is having the awareness in the present that whatever thought, feeling, impulse to action, or view that is being entertained or experienced is just one of many possible alternatives. What fouls us up is that we find it emotionally painful to concede that the high probability point of view that is automatically and mechanically arising in our mentation due to past experience and chemical or emotional state could be wrong, or is more accurately just one of many possible points of view. It just seems so inherently right, just by virtue of the fact that we ourselves are thinking it, and because there are no conflicting or competing views that are arising or occurring in us at the same time. That is because the nature of our brain and consciousness is such that we can really entertain only one coherent and meaningful view at a time. So what this boils down to is not buying into or believing in the validity or rightness or sacredness of what we are thinking, feeling, and doing at any given moment. It means being in a mental state where we do not take our mind content for granted, or rather regard it as suspect and susceptible to improvement or optimization. It means we are somewhat skeptical of ourselves. Non-identification further means that we are capable of redirecting our thoughts, feelings, and actions, should we find it in our best interests to traverse a different path, or in short, to transform the moment. Non-identification is an awareness in the immediate present moment that our thoughts, feelings, views, intentions, impulses, and manifestations are conditioned responses and are not sacred at all, but are just one way out of 1,000 ways of looking at and responding to a situation. But if we are so immersed or identified in what is proceeding within us that it does not even occur to us that another and possibly better view exists, then we are technically awake, but for all practical purposes, asleep. Because we are incapable at that moment of awakening from our waking dream and redirecting our thoughts, feelings, and actions. It does not occur to us that our current mind content is conditioned, mechanical, and one of many possible perspectives. Then we are hypnotized by the stream of consciousness and essentially asleep. You know, the craziest and most deranged thoughts, feelings, and impulses can occur in our brains. This content should not be taken for granted and accorded validity just because they are occurring in our mind. But on the other hand, it should also not be suppressed, dismissed, or ignored, but rather evaluated for what kind of messages other parts of ourselves are trying to communicate. More often than not, our raw thoughts, feelings, and impulses could greatly benefit from additional tweaking and processing. A lot of times, our thoughts, feelings, and impulses are coming from a part of ourselves that is not being heard, respected, honored, or allowed to express itself and have its needs fulfilled. This part or parts of our personality may have been suppressed and or ignored, perhaps for a long time. So its signals have become strident and extreme as a result.
How dare you? How dare you? Look at my face. This is bullshit. You scrub.
Understanding the messages from these unconscious parts is the province of psychotherapy. Non-identification just means not being possessed, engulfed, absorbed, and conjoined by any mind content or inner personality, but always keeping some slight measure of separation and detachment so that attention can redirect thoughts, feelings, and actions along different lines than upon the high probability path that one is traversing. An illustration might make identification and non-identification more clear. Let's say your blood sugar level has fallen to a new low and you are utterly ravenous. You may go to a restaurant, and when your food comes, you start bolting it down like a starving dog without any grace, appreciation, or without even really tasting the food. You are your own hunger. You are one with it. You are identified with it. At that moment, there is nothing separate that can allow you to see what is happening, and in that noticing, choose a different course of action, like eating more slowly and consciously. Non-identification at that moment would entail sufficient self-awareness to first observe or sense that you are eating like a dog, and then to redirect one's behavior to eat in a more conscious, deliberate, and leisurely manner. The essence of identification is that another way of looking at things or doing things never even occurs. An alternative doesn't even dawn on you. You are so consumed by your own waking dream that you are in fact possessed. And most of the time, the spirit doing the possessing is not exactly pushing our best foot forward.